This work of nonfiction is part biography and part art book. It is called The Life and Work of Henry Moore. It was researched, photo-designed, and written by Sean Connolly. This table of contents tells us that as we go through the book, we'll find out many things. The early years of Henry Moore, his new ideas, the sculptor's studio, what it looked like. We're also going to get a timeline, a glossary, and more books to read, and an index. Author Sean Connolly has done more than 36 other books, but those 36 books include these 4 about other famous artists like Paul Klee, Claude Monet, Leonardo da Vinci, and Vincent van Gogh. Who was Henry Moore? Henry Moore was a very important artist. He made huge sculptures out of stone, wood, and a metal called bronze. He also made many drawings. People from around the world asked Henry to make sculptures for them. This sculpture, made in 1978, stands in Dallas, Texas, in the United States. Early years. Henry Moore was born on the 30th of July, 1898, in Castleford, England. His father was a miner. When Henry was 12 years old, he went to Castleford Grammar School, and that's where this picture comes from, his grammar school. Henry was already good at art. When he was 16 years old, his teachers asked him to carve this roll of honor for his school, and he did it. London and Paris. Henry fought in the First World War for 2 years. In 1921, after World War I was over, he began studying at the Royal College of Art in London. 2 years later, he visited Paris in France. Henry saw many types of art in London and Paris. Henry made this sculpture, this one right here, of a small animal head in London in 1921 when he was studying. Settling in. In 1925, Henry became a teacher at the Royal College of Art in London. He was also busy making his own sculptures. In 1928, he had an exhibition in London. Henry carved his sculptures out of stone. He liked to show people lying on their side. He made many more sculptures like this one. The public eye. Henry became more famous. When he was 31, he had his first commission. It was a huge sculpture for the London Underground. The title of this sculpture was The North Wind. It shows Henry's interest in stone, fire, water, and wind. The modern world. In the 1930s, Henry became interested in abstract art. His sculptures began to look less like human beings and more like simple, rounded shapes. Henry collected pebbles, stones, and shells to see how nature creates shapes. This statue shows Henry's interest in smooth, curved surfaces. Getting known. More and more people saw the beauty in Henry's large sculptures. They were exhibited in Europe and the United States of America. This is a picture of the Museum of Modern Art in New York City in the United States of America. Henry sold this sculpture to the Museum of Modern Art in New York. It shows how his sculptures were only partly abstract. Here you can still see human shapes. War artist. The Second World War began in 1939. 2 years later, Henry became an official war artist. He drew the daily life of people in London during the war. These drawings are some of Henry's most powerful works. This one shows people trying to sleep while bombs explode outside. Traveling the world. After the war, Henry traveled to many places. He got many awards and prizes for his sculptures. This picture shows Henry and a friend in Venice, Italy, in a little plaza near San Marco. Henry's prizes did not change his way of thinking. He made this tender sculpture of Mary and Jesus for a church in Suffolk, England. Time for a change. In the 1950s, Henry tried new ways of working. Until then, he carved directly from stone. Now, he made many sculptures from bronze and wood. Henry could make even bigger, smoother sculptures out of bronze. This sculpture of a woman is in front of a building in London, England. New ideas. Henry also looked for new ideas. In the 1960s, he began putting one shape inside another one. Many of these combined shapes created hollow sculptures. Art critics called this negative space. Henry wanted people to look at his large sculptures from all sides. These two oval shapes seem alike at first. They only look different when you walk around them. The sculptor's studio. Henry moved to Perry Green in Hertfordshire when London was bombed during the war. He was very happy there. There were sheep in the field outside Henry's studio. In the 1970s, Henry made many sketches of the sheep. He made this sculpture to go in the field. And in this photo, you can see the sculpture and you can see the sheep. An active life ends. Henry still worked when he was more than 80 years old. He died on the 31st of August in 1986. He was 88 years old. There was a special service in Westminster Abbey when he died. The Prime Minister was there, lords and ladies were there, and this is his daughter Mary, who brought her 2 children to the funeral as well. This sculpture is the largest bronze work that Henry ever made. Henry made it just 1 year before he died. It's called Large Divided Oval Butterfly, and it's 9 tons. The end. This nonfiction book is part biography. It tells the life story of Henry Moore. Many biographies have what's called a timeline. So in 1898, that's when Henry Moore was born. This is when he served in the First World War. This was Henry's first exhibit of his work in London. This was him winning a big award, the Companion of Honor in Great Britain, and this is when his life ends in 1986. So that timeline is here. Nonfiction books often have a glossary. That's a list of words that come up in the book that you may not know about, such as, what is abstract art? It's art that tries to show ideas rather than the way things looked. Henry Moore told a friend before he died that even when he tried to do abstract art, it still ended up looking like something. Exhibition. If you don't know that word, this explains that it's a public showing of somebody's art. So this is the glossary. More books to read. Recommendation is The Children's Book of Art by Rosie Dickens. And more sculptures to see. All three of these are in England. The large reclining figure, the two-piece reclining figure, and the mask at the Tate Gallery in London. Author Sean Connolly wrote about the Henry Moore sculpture in New York City at the Museum of Modern Art, but you can find Henry Moore sculptures in Princeton, New Jersey, Toronto, Ontario, and many other places in North America. This nonfiction picture book has been The Life and Work of Henry Moore by Sean Connolly.